I'm a musician. I've always been a musician. I also love teaching. Finding the opportunity to teach as well as, to perform has always been what keeps me sane.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Our job is to make sure that our students see art, understand art, appreciate it, and if they are passionate enough, create it.
She's changing the minds of people whose minds were pretty fixed on what the arts were not for and could not do.
Good reading, guys. Come on, let me hear you.
The biggest challenge that we have is the data conversation, because that is the reason why people give not to do arts. Where Myron has been really effective is she manages to humanize those words and numbers and to help us all meet in the middle and recognize that the reason that we're struggling with each other is not about each other. It's about ways to support kids.
This is the sink here. Now get here, you round it up like this. Right? You see how I'm doing that?
This building process for Boston Public Schools of arts education has been very purposeful, and it's a partnership. The school district, the arts community, we have both sides of our community who are committed to arts education, and we're working parallel.
Pencils?
Learning and working in the arts provides students the opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, to be reflective, to learn how to work as a team. It turns them into these wonderful, creative thinking citizens. And they take all of the skills that we teach them in the arts and they can apply them.
And then also
the arts are there to really help our children understand how to learn, and in a space where, for many of them, it is that space where they feel successful.
Myron Parker Brass has overseen an ambitious expansion of the arts that has brought a diverse array of dance, music, theater, and the visual arts instruction to classrooms in the Boston Public Schools. Carol Johnson, the former superintendent in Boston who hired Myron, praised her as someone who not only shared our vision for access and equitable opportunities, but someone who could strengthen our connections to the arts community. Myron could have stayed in her local community role, but she decided that the work she could do for the Boston Public Schools compelled her. Myron, please join me. Where are you? Myron. Congratulations on being a leader to learn from for your leadership in arts education. So next up, look, we've got more interchangeable parts here. Education Week reporter Arianna Prothero and Superintendent Lewis Ferebee of the Indianapolis Public Schools.
So first of all, thank you, Dr. Lewis Ferebee, for being here today. So we're going to talk about charter schools and districts and how they can work together, which is something that Lewis has been doing in Indianapolis Public Schools. So basically, Lewis has been doing this by helping to create something called Innovation Network Schools, which, among other things, allows the district to partner with high-performing charter leaders to manage consistently struggling schools. So in a nutshell, and we'll flesh this out as we go along, Innovation Network Schools have charter-like autonomy, but they are still under the district. They're still accountable to the district. So with that said, Lewis, why did you go this route in developing Innovation Network Schools?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I believe that history tells us that our greatest successes our most outstanding accomplishments as a result of partnerships from relationships that were once contentious. And so I believe in public education, we're only as great as the least of us. And so we have traditional public schools or charter schools that are successful, we all succeed, but we have one school that's not successful, then we all have a failure. And so I believe we have an obligation to create opportunities for collaboration. I don't believe that there's a need to have a civil war, if you will. And I think we're now in a time where we can capitalize on the strengths and the opportunities of both traditional and charter public schools.
So I think what a lot of people here will want to know is the idea of innovation network schools and these partnerships with charter schools, is this idea portable? Can it work in other school districts?
Absolutely. You know, I had the fortune of inheriting an opportunity where almost 40% of our students in the city attend charter schools, and then of course we have our traditional public school system. There are many cities across the nation that are in similar scenarios, and we've already seen interest in this legislation that we were able to pass in Indiana and states like Pennsylvania. We also seen it in North Carolina. And I just believe that there is going to be a new wave of thinking differently around how this partnership could work for school districts. I'm inspired by Michelle King, new superintendent in Los Angeles Unified, who openly stated in her first comments is that we believe we can create a system that both supports our traditional public schools and our charters. So I definitely think it's portable. Our law and our legislation in Indiana continues to evolve. It started in Indianapolis, but there's something available to all the school corporations in Indiana right now.
And for those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to read the profile on Lewis, these innovation network schools had to be created through legislation. They're now a law that has gone from Indianapolis statewide. Can you explain to us what some of the benefits to the district has been in partnering with these charter schools?
And so one benefit is previously we had a structure where our Department of Education in our state would take over schools and assign them to various operators. We've been able to change that structure where we are proactively identifying partners where we need to transform schools that have been chronically low performing. I also think it's an opportunity for us to take advantage of the economies of scale with services like transportation, food, nutrition, and when we do that really well, the district not only benefits, but also our charter partners benefit as well. We're able to repurpose those resources back into the classroom. So we know we have limited resources, and whether it's traditional school or our charter public schools, all of us are relying on our taxpayer dollars and resources to improve student outcomes. And so we believe that this is an opportunity for us to enhance the resources that we already have and also learn from each other to ensure that we serve our students and families well.
And I think a point that you made when we were talking about this for the story was that this also keeps these schools in neighborhoods. It's about creating quality neighborhood schools.
Exactly, and so one of our strategies has been if we enter into a partnership with the charter organization is that we maintain that school as a neighborhood school, and those students who live in that neighborhood have priority to that school, and most importantly, they have access to transportation because many of our charter schools in Indianapolis don't currently offer transportation, and we're able to offer that for them.
I think that's so interesting, bringing the charter school idea to the neighborhood. And in our final question, I want you to talk a little bit about what lessons have you learned working and partnering and bringing these two sectors that are often cast as foes, the district and the charter schools. What have you learned from bringing these two sectors together?
Well, one thing that really stands out is that I've learned that our parents in our larger community doesn't really care about the civil war going on internally in public education. What parents care about is having a quality school in their neighborhood. Parents want to ensure that when they drop their children off at the front door, they're going to be nurtured and cared for. And our larger community, particularly our business community, wants to ensure that we're preparing students for a career in college. And they want to ensure that we have quality seats in all of our schools. And so I believe this is an opportunity to ensure that we offer those quality seats, that we're nurturing and developing our students accordingly. And so I've been excited about it. I believe our community is excited about it. Of course, we have traditional public schools that have their stake in the ground, that they don't want to collaborate or partner, or perhaps some charters. But I believe that we have an opportunity to be a flagship school district, urban school district in the nation, that's reimagining what could be for public education.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming up here and sharing your experiences with us. I would like to thank you again for joining us, and yeah, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you for having me.
Currently, in Indianapolis, 15,000 students are in charters and 30,000 are in IPS facilities. Lewis Ferebee believes that neighborhood schools and charter schools can coexist, as you've just heard. He doesn't believe that has to be one or the other. Indeed, Lewis says, this is a quote, "We'd love to create a new narrative where those 45,000 students are all considered Indianapolis public school students." And he makes a bold case for it with the way he partners with charters and the community and the efforts he makes to ensure that his neighborhood schools remain vital learning centers. Superintendent Ferebee is effectively leveraging charters as an equal partner in raising student achievement and bolstering Indianapolis's public school sector. Lewis, come on over. Congratulations on being recognized for your leadership in district charter partnership. Look, we get our picture taken and you get hardware.
Thank you.
You have to look at the camera.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Neither of my parents graduated from high school. Neither sets of grandparents graduated from high school. I know something about generational poverty. I know hunger. Poverty is not a learning disability, but poverty provides barriers to student achievement for too many of our kids in Vancouver public schools.
When you don't know where you're going to be sleeping tonight, when you're hungry, it's just basic that you're not going to learn as well, and you're not going to achieve your best.
Could you pat yourself on the back and say, "I'm a rockin' reader"? Okay, we're going to be doing house.
The community schools approach is really about thinking about how do we bring basic need support to families. All of our family community resource centers have food pantries, personal hygiene closets, clothing closets. We can quickly connect kids to dental, vision, and medical support. Depending upon the site, supports for mental health services, housing services.
Yes, there may be some who question our public schools getting outside of their area of responsibility, but this is about building stronger community. So I absolutely think it is a responsibility of this public education system to work together to build neighborhood assets and revitalize their communities.
When Superintendent Steve Webb and Chief of Staff Tom Hagley saw big economic changes coming to the Vancouver, Washington School District, which, by the way, is in southern Washington, near Oregon, they undertook a major initiative to put in place a range of support services for students and families to manage the coming challenges they knew their families would face. For their exceptional work, Steve has been recognized by his state as the Superintendent of the Year, and today Education Week recognizes both him and his Chief of Staff, Tom Hagley, as 2016 Leaders to Learn From. Come on up. You guys get hardware. And I want to be in the middle. Okay. And look at the camera. Joining me up here on stage are Associate Editor of Education Week, Steve Sawchuck, the Teacher Beat blog author, and Renee Pryor, our 2016 Leader to Learn from Tennessee.
Good morning. Well, I am so happy to be here with Renee Pryor. She is the Director of Evaluation Programs for Lincoln County Schools in Tennessee, which is a nice way of saying that she basically helps keep the district's evaluation support program for teachers on the rails. Not an easy job if you've been following the teacher evaluation discussion like I've been doing. And before we get to questions, I just want to say one thing about Renee. She is the most modest person I have ever met in my entire life. She is the most soft-spoken leader I have ever met. And this is Washington, where people generally want the spotlight as opposed to avoiding it. In fact, so I had to do a little bit of bait and switch to get Renee here today. When I first talked to her, I said, well, Renee, we're just going to do this little profile, and, you know, it'll be in the paper. It's not going to be blah, blah. And then like a week later, I called back and said, well, you know, the editors are really impressed, and they'd love it if you would host a chat on edweek.org. But don't worry, I mean, you don't actually have to talk to anybody for it. I mean, it's just online. And
just type it.
then a week later, I called back again, and I said, well, you know, we'd like to actually send a videographer to follow you around your school district for a day or two. And then finally I said, well, we'd like to put you on stage in front of Krieg lights and 300 people you've never met before. So here we are, extending your 15 minutes of fame, perhaps a little longer than you would like, but I'm so thrilled that you're here today. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about this morning actually comes from the chat that we did, and you were contacted by one of the participants who said, you know, Renee, if we don't do teacher evaluation right, people are just going to leave their jobs. What is the most important thing that you've learned about doing teacher evaluation right?
Okay, so in evaluation, so many times teachers feel exposed instead of empowered. And along the way, this started about 5 years ago, but along the way, we learned that we have to support those teachers, not just through being evaluated. Obviously, that's not the support, it's the coaching after the evaluation, and it's the strategies we give them to support the learners in the classroom, the teaching for those learners. And you know, we have to help those teachers when we give them programs, when we new assessments, for instance, this year in Tennessee. You know, we have to support how do I not only assess students, test students, but then the platform there, it's online. So we have to make sure we give the teachers the supports they need to work with those students. So as you go in after an evaluation, then it's what can I do? What can I do to help that teacher do their job better in that classroom? And I think that's one of the things that we do well is the PD in our system, purchasing programs if they need it, technology if they need it, but then after we give those that technology to the teacher, then coming back in and saying, what is it that you need to be more successful using that technology or using that curriculum?
When we were talking about the work that you actually do with classroom teachers one-on-one, you said, I don't even really like the term evaluation so much. You like to have coaching conversations. Exactly. And one of the things that you learned over the period at which you've become proficient in doing this is that you told me I needed to do less telling and more asking. Can you tell our audience today what that means? Okay, so in the classroom we tell teachers, ask, don't tell. Because teaching is not telling, teaching is engaging the student in the learning. And we do that by asking questions. And the first year, whenever we started this, I found myself telling the score, telling the area of strength and the area of weakness, and then the conversation stopped. So I had to learn how do I keep the teacher engaged in this process so that they feel like at the end that they're growing and developing from the process. So I started asking questions like, what was the learning intention of that lesson? When you looked at your students, were they engaged? What were they engaged in? What was the conversation you were hearing as you circulated through the class? What were the outcomes of the assessment? Did it truly mirror the standard and the rigor of that standard? And so in doing so, I put the teacher in the leader's seat. I sat back and I listened
to them, and by listening to them and showing through listening that I cared about them, then it supported improvement.
One of the other things that you do is you're not just somebody who comes and evaluates teacher, you actually advocate for them. And one of the ways that you do this is you've actually been one of the people that goes up to the state education department and says, look, state education department, here are the things that are working with our evaluation program. Here are the things that aren't working. And clearly your teachers know that, that the state has rules and that you're going to follow them, but they also know that their feedback is going up to the people who make these decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about what that balance has been like?
I was at the State Department Tuesday with Dr. Terry Sue Fanning and our new director of school, Dr. Bill Heath, with an issue about portfolios and just some questions we had, and they invited us to come and we took teachers with us. That was another thing we did well there. We took teachers with us, and in doing so, those teachers knew that they had a voice, and that the State Department was no longer the State Department. It was the person's name sitting across the table from them, listening to their fears and their worries, and listening to some of what did they need as a teacher in the classroom, and then feeling when they left that conversation that they were truly being heard, and that policy may not change, may not change right that instant. But that they were listening to them and their concerns. And so yes, they know that if they come to us, and it's anybody in our central office, I hate using I, it's about us. And they feel like our teachers in our district know that they can contact me, Dr. Terry Sue Fanning, the director of school, all the other, even the maintenance supervisor. I mean, we're open to working with teachers and for those students and for those parents. And I think that's just critical when we work with teachers, them knowing that we're there to help them.
I don't think I could possibly have rounded that up any better. So thank you again for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
And being under the spotlights with me.
I feel a little exposed. I feel like a teacher right now in evaluation, by the way. But I do want to say that 8 seconds left, I do feel like evaluation it's about celebrating, and that's one thing we forget about, is we celebrate teachers every day, and in that classroom I can go out and announce to the world what I'm seeing happening that's great in that classroom.
Getting a low score on a teacher evaluation can feel terribly personal. Renee Pryor knows that, and she has figured out how to take the sting out of that experience and develop individual professional development plans with teachers who are struggling. She takes the time to build teachers up and drive their success, even as she keeps her eyes squarely on student achievement in her Lincoln County, Tennessee district. Renee, congratulations on being recognized for your leadership, I'm going to say, in teacher coaching.
Coaching, thank you.
I like
Not
that.
evaluation.
You get this, and you and I do this. Stick of the camera. Thank you. Congrats.
I had a passion for literacy, teaching kids to read. I started in Wake County in 1977 as a second grade teacher. Because I taught in the early grades, I very much value early learning.
Like this one.
My first principalship job, I realized that a lot of my job was not just about the classroom environment, but it was about where my kids were coming from. I learned I had to be a social worker, a guidance counselor, sometimes a father figure. There was a lot more than just leading the school. There was also getting to know the community I worked in.
All right, so what is it that we're working on over here?
All kids can learn to read. It may take some a little bit longer than others. And if we don't have our kids reading by third grade, then their chance of graduation diminishes greatly.
What number is that?
There's a lot of pressure on teachers to meet the standards that we have through Common Core and the way the curriculum's been revamped. So that pressure has resulted in teachers feeling like they can't have time for children to be engaged in playful learning. They feel like they have to have children sitting and listening and learning. That's just not the way kids learn at that age.
¿Cuántos sapitos quedaron afuera? Uno. Muy bien. ¿Cuántos sapitos hay en la laguna?
One of the things we talk about with early learning is quality, engaging learning environments. That's just really important. And so when I'm in classrooms, I really want to see children engaged in their learning. When I stepped into a district leadership position, I had to partner with schools. Teachers are the ones that are going to make things happen. They're the ones that are going to actually execute any kind of reform that we propose. If we don't have their buy-in, it's a waste of time. So one way to get that buy-in is to be in their classroom, to have them see you. I made it a point that my job was going to be about being in schools, being a partner with schools, and trying to help principals grow and do a better job at what they do.
Steve Oates' work on bringing play-based learning back to kindergarten in his North Carolina district is counter to the major trend of making early childhood education more rigidly academic. Isn't that funny? Kindergarten, play, seems like a no-brainer. But as Steve emphasizes, it's about building quality learning environments for those children. In those environments, Assistant Superintendent of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County District adds, play can help form the basis of an exceptional educational experience for children. You all are reacting. In the weeks since our Leaders to Learn From report came out last month, readers have devoured Steve's profile, frankly more than any other, though it's not a competition. No wagering, please. Educators are clearly hungry for successful stories of how to make the earliest years of school enriching and engaging for our youngest learners. Steve, where are you? Congratulations. The longest walk or something, I don't know. You get this?
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, we've got Assistant Editor for Education Week teacher Ross Brenneman at the front and Superintendent John Asplund.
All right. Thank you very much. So as Janine said, I'm Ross Brenneman. I'm the Assistant Editor for Education Week teacher, and I have the pleasure to be joined here today by John Asplund, Superintendent of the Farmington Central School District in Illinois. John's a former teacher, coach, athlete, principal. In 2011, he and his family left suburban Chicago for rural Farmington, and I visited Farmington in December, and one of the major themes there was investment. And John and his school board have created this vision, according to everyone I talked to, for what Farmington can be, and that includes, in the words of the board president, a lot more than just farmers. And that's not necessarily easy investment because, well, part of it is traditional difficulties that come with rural education, and then part of it is being in Illinois. Because when was Illinois supposed to pass a budget?
Which year?
Let's say 2015.
Well, in 2015 they would have passed the budget in April, and it's now March 2016, and we still don't have one. So. And
the Chicago, you said there's the Chicago Sun-Times released.
They had my favorite headline. It said, "Governor budget presentations 2, actual budgets 0."
So maybe around November 2017 is the target date for a budget.
That's what we're hearing, yeah.
So that's super. There's a long list of accomplishments that can be credited to John and the faculty and staff that he's helped develop, and I want to just read some of them off here. There's a new teacher-led PD system, a new student library, a new parking lot, which doesn't necessarily sound sexy until you have a bad parking lot. A revised curriculum, and perhaps the crowning achievement, a massive solar array consisting of 2,350 panels which at the time of installation a couple years ago was the largest solar array for a public school ever. What led you to take on that challenge?
In our school district, because we are in a part of Illinois that is not experiencing growth, we felt like we needed to do something bold. We needed to go out and make a name for ourselves. We're always competing for students. We're part of the larger Peoria metropolitan area. And in that competition, we needed to make sure we were doing something to separate ourselves, but also to be able to show our students a little bit of a glimpse of the future, that we felt like for too long maybe we'd been reactionary, and this was something that we could do to be out in front of something new and exciting, and something that we felt would be part of our lives for a long time. And so we took upon this opportunity to install this very large solar array on the school board's, or on the school district's facility roof.
And a North Carolina district has passed you.
Yes, we got second now.
And but there's maybe some news. So now you fought back.
Yeah, we're not taking that lying down. We recently were given an opportunity to perhaps, and the board will be considering this opportunity on Monday, to install an additional megawatt of solar electricity on our facility, and that would put us firmly back in first with 1.75 megawatts of solar power generated at the facility.
About 6,500 panels.
A total would be about 6,500 panels, yes.
And that would make you the first net zero?
If everything would go according to plan, we would be the very first net zero school district in the United States.
So a lot of the people that I talked to credited this yes mentality that you brought to the district. And one of the first things that you did when you actually got to the district was you formed a book club. And what was the first book that you had your administrative team read?
Well, the very first book we had read, and this is not staged, I was so thrilled when I found out she was here, was Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck.
What was one of the athletic director, the activities director said, basically something along the lines of, I don't really love books, but I really liked this one. And, what kind of reception did the rest of the staff get to that?
Well, I think originally it was looked at a little bit differently. I am and always will consider myself an English teacher, and so when I first started, I explained to them, look, as the administrators in this district, we would expect ourselves to be the lead learners, and so we're going to lead by example. And I do expect you to then make these opportunities available in your buildings as well. So we've really kind of cascaded that downward so that there's always some type of new learning being approached. And I was the first one that picked out several books, but now that's been given out, and everybody has an opportunity to pick out books. And we have teacher-led book clubs, and so they're going on all over the district now. And initially, I don't know if it was met with all the excitement in the world, but I can say now that people are very excited to start their own.
Great. Your curriculum advisor, Donna McCaw, she had a quote that I really liked that was basically if you put a good teacher in a bad system, the system wins every time. And that teachers, when they hear no, 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 no over and over again, that they forget about the word yes. And so you've really tried to change that. And I'm wondering, when a teacher comes to you with an idea, what's your process for saying, that's something that we can do? How do you get to yes?
Fantastic question. We start with core values. We start with the district's mission and vision statements. And when we say yes, it's always yes if. Yes, we will do it if you can show me how this fits into our greater core values. Yes, we'll do this if you can tell us how we're going to afford it. Yes, you can do it if you can tell me what it's going to replace, because we're really good in education about adding things on but never subtracting anything. Mm-hmm. And so we want to talk about making sure time is also something very precious to people. So if we're going to do something, we're going to do it well. And we want to make sure that those questions are answered. How does it fit into the greater good? How does it benefit all students? How are we going to pay for it? And making sure that all those barriers are recognized and how we can work around them. And if we can answer yes and have a solution to all of those, we've typically met all of those requests with yes.
So just as an example, one of your history teachers came to you and said, I want to be in charge of creating a new multimedia center, a new library. So what was the process for that like?
Well, that was an interesting one. So if you look at my picture on there, you see behind me is a beautiful painting. That happens to be in my office. But within our school research centers, we also now have beautiful paintings done by students, by the way. Those are all student paintings. we had a new vision for the library. The library that we used to have was much more of the traditional model where students had to get a pass to come in and ask, sit down, read a book, be very quiet. My office is right off of the high school research center. And so a new vision was put together, and really it did not require a lot of money, and he went through all the processes of, this is what I want to do, this is how we're going to paint it, this is how we're going to pay for it, this is how we're going to get the furniture, this is how we're going to set it up, I want to be put in charge of it, this is how I'm going to get certified to do it. All of those things were put into place, and once again it was like, yeah, if you can do all those things, then let's do it. And he's gone even beyond everything that he said he was going to do. I mean, it's now all three of our libraries within our complex are research centers and very much hubs of student activity all day long.
Great. What's when an idea when it's not quite ready for prime time, what are the kinds of key questions you ask to get it to yes?
Well, once again, we talk about identifying the barriers. And so once we get to where that we feel all the barriers have been identified, if there's something that's still out there that might not be led to a yes, we still have to tackle that part of it. And the thing that I've learned over the course of my experience as being a superintendent, which is now almost 15 years, is helping people to see those things, but then really stepping back and letting them work through the problems rather than trying to do all the work all the time. A lot of the time our job is to make sure the work gets done and to verify that it gets done, but to give people ownership of the solution. So if they see the problems, give them ownership in the solution and give them the opportunities to break those barriers down. Don't do it for them, but help them get the tools to do it, but then turn them loose and let them do the work.
Great. And last thing real quick is you formed a legislative group as well, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in Illinois we are a bit dysfunctional, and so we've tried to get very proactive with our legislative leaders, and so we've put together a local legislative group to try to do some lobbying for rural Illinois and for our students, because of the way schools are funded in Illinois, we really need all the help we can get.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. John Asplund.
At the helm of Illinois' Farmington Central School District, Superintendent Asplund has ushered in innovations that are exposing students to opportunities and skills they will need to find their footing in a dramatically shifting local economy. To create those opportunities, as we've heard just in the last minutes, John's been encouraging his colleagues to propose, develop, and execute on the changes they want to see in their schools. He likes to say yes, as you've heard. If the upshot of an idea is good for kids, he says, we should be doing it. While managing change, and the pace of change is never easy, the district and community are benefiting from John's can-do attitude and the ideas from all quarters that have resulted. Let's congratulate John.
All right, thank you.
Look at him.
Yeah.